Welcome to Living Xtreme Hospitality. I'm Michael Brown, your host, and if you're passionate about hospitality, you're in the right place. With over 46 years of industry experience, my mission is simple: elevate hospitality. In this podcast, we'll explore the world of hospitality with industry experts, from organizational tools to personal anecdotes. We'll uncover the secrets of extreme hospitality, but it's not just about us. We want to hear from you. Your input shapes our discussions, fostering a community dedicated to extreme hospitality. Join the conversation and let's make each episode a step towards hospitality excellence. Living Extreme Hospitality. Taste the difference. Welcome to Living Extreme Hospitality. I'm thrilled to introduce our first guest, Russell Ybarra, a titan in hospitality and entrepreneurship. In 1992, Russell revitalized his father's struggling Pearland restaurant, defying history's failures. Gringo's Mexican Kitchen opened in 1993, marking the start of a remarkable journey. Russell's hospitality ethos centers on building guest relationships, fostering honesty and respect among team members, reinvesting in the community, developing trust with vendors, and never settling. With 2,700 employees and a legacy of success, Russell epitomizes extreme hospitality. Join us as we explore his inspiring journey. Welcome, Russell Ybarra, to Living Extreme Hospitality. Good morning, Russell Ybarra. Thank you for joining me today on this inaugural event of Living Extreme Hospitality. And I'm so happy to have you here because I met you a few months ago at an engagement that was raising money for education, and you were the guest speaker there. And I was so impressed with your how much you've accomplished and just how humble you were. And I just wanted to know what helped you to get there, and how did you manage to get all of these businesses established? And you were just so humble about the way you spoke. And so I just really am honored the fact that you have given me the opportunity to bring you in on Living Extreme Hospitality. And so could you just share with me a little bit, Russell, about your starting? How did you get started?
Well, thank you for having me. I got started, I grew up in the industry, and like I tell people, Tex-Mex chose me. I did not choose it. And all the while I was growing up, never did I realize I was already in my future. I just didn't know it yet, because there were times where I was literally out of the restaurant business mentally and swore to myself I would never get back into it. But as fate would have it, here I am, and I'm glad it turned out the way it did.
Awesome. I remember at the engagement that you spoke at, you talked about a chance that you took on the first Gringos. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes. So the chance that I took, opening a restaurant inside a building where 4 other restaurants had already failed, wasn't really something that I wanted to do by design. It was really out of necessity. Our family owned the property, and my father had actually purchased this building back in 1981. And had a restaurant there. Previously, it was a steakhouse. So he goes in as the second restaurant and was there for about 7 years, and it never did very well. So he ended up closing it and leasing it to another restaurant called Old Galveston Seafood. And they were there for about 3 or 4 years. And then the building came vacant again. And he, on this deal, he had a lease purchase agreement lined up with this Italian restaurant, Joe Mangiafico. And it was, when I say lease purchase, it was, he leased it and sold it at the very same moment. But the caveat was the earnest money for the purchase part of the deal was due 60 days after he opened. And on the 60th day, the building was vacant again. The gentleman left. So our family got the building back. So now it's been a steakhouse, a Mexican restaurant, a seafood restaurant, and an Italian restaurant. So one of my duties at the office was I was responsible for handling accounts payable. So I was the one handwriting the checks back then to the bank that held the mortgage on the property, Pearland State Bank. And the payment was $4,852.10 a month. And it was a very, very difficult payment to make. And it literally scarred me because my father's approach was not to let the building go back. I mean, he was going to make it work no matter what. But at the same token, it was really draining the company because $4,800 back in those days was a lot of money.
A lot of money.
I think it was about the equivalent of about 10 or 11,000 today.
Yeah.
But so I'm running the tortilla factory, and this is I'm running the factory because I'm out of the restaurant business, never to get back in it again. And so I started having a discussion with my younger brother, Troy, who owns Johnny Tamales today, but just floating the idea of opening it up again, and that's what we did. And we really didn't have a budget other than maybe $10,000, if that. And every piece of equipment in that building was used when we opened it. But the idea came about in August of '92. We opened on January 11th of '93, and every single piece of equipment, furniture, you name it, in that building was used. Every single piece, with the exception of one piece. That was the POS system. I had to make sure that no matter what business we generated, we had to have an account of it. So I made sure that piece was new. Now, it was only 2 terminals, and it was only $5,000, so basically almost 50% of the budget to open. Wow. But it was an important piece of the process.
So you mentioned that you had made this declaration that, you know what, the business, you don't want to do it. Oftentimes when we raised in the business, you decide, I don't want to do it because it, you know, at first it's just like dad and mom says do it. I had the same experience with my daughters who started out working with me and then eventually went to Chick-fil-A, you know, because they didn't want to work with dad. And then they sometimes showed up late, and, you know, they were the toughest employees sometimes. So you had this experience that, you know, I'm not going to do this anymore. You know, I inherited it. But then what was the pivotal moment for you? Because obviously you're doing well at it. Your people.
Yes, I am doing well at it today, but everything kind of just came to a crossroads around that moment. So I was 31 when I opened up Gringo's, and I'm 62 now. So basically, it's been half my life. But the most important part of my life was actually the previous 10 years, maybe even 12 years, where straight out of high school, I did not go to college. I went straight to work for my father. But the last 3 restaurants he opened they all failed. He closed all 3 of them. And so it was like nothing we did would work. And so I got out. I started putting some of the equipment that he had in his commissary to work, because he had 6 restaurants at the time. But when I say 6 restaurants, they were all small, 3,500 square foot Tex-Mex mom and pops kind of restaurants. But he did have some really nice systems for that size operation. But yeah, so yeah, I'm working for him, and like I said, he closed 3 restaurants, the last 3. So I'm running the factory. I'm selling to any restaurant in Houston, Mexican restaurant that would buy a product from me. And I would always run into the same problem. I call it a problem, but it was what I call guilt by association. A lot of people would not want to buy from me because they knew our family also had some Mexican restaurants. So I kept running into that, and also a big part of what shaped Gringo's even today that we focused heavily on is consistency. Okay. So a lot of the equipment my father had was antiquated. It could not produce a consistent product. The corn tortilla oven, for example, was basically a toaster oven where it would either bake the tortilla perfectly or overbake it or underbake it. It was like a toaster oven where it burned them, put burn marks on them, or maybe it didn't. The roller heads that formed the corn tortilla was they would sometimes get off balance, and one side of the tortilla is thick, one side of it's thin. So anyway, it was frustrating because I worked really hard to pick up some of these accounts in Houston. I had some really nice accounts. I had Chili's, I had Casole, I would sell to Papacitos off and on. But my product kept biting me back because it was just not consistent enough for them, and so I'm paranoid. It made me paranoid especially when I opened up Gringo's. I said, look, No matter what we serve, we just have to make sure that it is consistent. It is the same in, same out. Speaking of Chick-fil-A, Truett Cathy had a saying that it's okay to serve a terrible cup of coffee. Just be sure and serve it that way each and every time.
Every time.
And, you know, McDonald's has proven that systems and procedures and consistency is the key to growth.
Yeah.
And so here we are, 31 years later, we have 20 full-service restaurants and a lot of momentum to continue growing, but systems and procedures play a big part of that.
Wow. You know, this is for the listeners out there who are either going into the business or are in the business now. This is some very, very valuable information that Russell's just shared with us. I do know that I went into your restaurant with my wife for a church event, and I remember walking up and the doors opened for me by your staff. And I thought, wow, I haven't seen this kind of service since being in New York. And I said, okay, so then they ushered us to the table. Then we got served by a person. The attitudes were very hospitable. And because we're talking about extreme hospitality, I understand the systems, and I understand systems help the staff to be consistent and to rely on it. But it's something that you instilled in your staff, and you have like 2,700 employees.
Thereabouts, yes.
Something they've picked up from you, because, you know, there's a guy, I was going to forget his name, but he says everything rises and falls with leadership.
That's correct.
And it escapes me his name, but anyway.
It may have been John Maxwell.
John Maxwell. And so you can't give to something that you don't already, something you don't already possess. Tell me about that, how that can help our listeners to say, you know what? This is what I endeavor for. I don't necessarily understand how yet, but Russell, tell us what happened there.
Okay, so let's go back to January the 11th, 1993, the day we opened at 11 a.m. We had 2 dining rooms. We only had enough money to furnish one of them, 25 tables, 4 seats each. So we sat 100 guests the day we opened. And the other dining room was closed. We didn't have enough money to fill that one up. And that's where we kept our open sign, the neon open sign that has a little string attached to it. And when I went over to that window to pull that string the day we opened, I stood there waiting for that very, very first car to pull into the parking lot. And I remember to this day that the feeling I got, it was one of extreme gratitude, because here was a person willing to give this building one more chance, another chance. And so I told myself that's a feeling I never want to forget, ever. And obviously, I cannot touch every table that walks in that visits, or every party that visits our restaurant. There's just no way. So how do I affect that? How do I try to do my best to touch that table? And it can only be done by how I treat my senior leadership, how they treat the management teams, and how the GM treats his staff. And it just trickles down. And, you know, my first job in the industry was as dishwasher. And even today, I'll go back, when I walk through a kitchen, I'll make sure to acknowledge the dishwasher, because they're such an important component of our success. If they walk out, it's a mess.
Yeah.
I mean, and someone has to get back there and do it, and no one wants to. So I just have a lot of gratitude for every single person that walks through our doors, especially when you consider how many restaurants there are out there that they could have visited, but they chose you. Out of all those restaurants, they chose you. And if you cannot show gratitude for that, then I can't help you, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's really simple. When I was coming up and learning French cuisine as a chef, I've studied Gustave Escoffier, and he said, above all, make it simple, faites-le simple. And that has stuck with me when it comes to, like you just talked about, how you treat your people. I remember going to your corporate office, and when I walked away, I remember the joy that looked like that everybody had in your office. Everybody seemed to be fulfilled, and enjoying what they're doing, and that for us is a benefit to doing what we do. I remember when we opened Michael's Backstreet Cafe in Irvington, New Jersey in 1989. And we hired a lot of young Hispanic and Black employees. We had a Czechoslovakian, we had an African. We were all in a Black Hispanic neighborhood, but our clientele was 67% white Jewish clientele. And that's because my wife, who was a great marketer, she would would have me, at the West Orange Manor with all of these chefs. I'm the only Black chef amongst 50 chefs, but I'm giving away food and I'm doing charity events. And then the next they come to the restaurant. Well, I didn't know the effect that it would have on these young 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds until 25 years later. I'm getting, they're finding me on the internet and they're saying, Chef, what you and your wife did for us, you didn't have no idea how it affected my life. That was so valuable to me. But yeah, I see that and it trickles down, but so often it's overlooked in this industry.
Right.
We have people that get in the industry just to make money, and we have people that get in the industry that just don't have the inner fortitude to bring what people deserve. Right. I remember one time, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, I had a bag lady who saved all her money to come have a meal, and I personally took care of her. And I pulled her chair and I sat her down, and while everybody was looking at her strangely, I felt, I don't care who you are, you could be the President of the United States, you're going to get the same quality service. You're not just talking the talk, you're walking the walk. And to be able to do that with 2,700 employees, I met Pastor Sam, the gentleman that helps minister to the different employees that you have. What a blessing that is, and what the forethought that you had. He kind of explained to me how he got into that position because you identified a gift in him. And so let me ask you this. On a good day, everybody shows up for work, everybody's doing the right thing. But we all know that there are some times when you get a couple of challenging people that work for you. What is your philosophy on correction when it comes to someone that is doing something that may be detrimental to your business?
Yes, we have to pay attention to the behavior of all our team members and try to be proactive in recognizing that they may be having issues going on. And a lot of times it's personal issues. It could be financial, it could be a relationship or what have you. But what's important is that management see the whole picture and not just the fact that they may be not providing an excellent level of service. So communication, I'm a big believer in praise in public, discipline in private, because that's the only way you can really be effective as a leader, as a manager. And so we've Pastor Sam, we're one of the few restaurant chains that have a full-time pastor on our payroll. And he does go around visiting our restaurants, helping staff, ministering to them, counseling them. Today, for whatever reason, and I blame all of it on social media, but, when I was growing up, I didn't have any access to what was going on around the world. Nothing, other than what you saw on the television at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. news. And when I was growing up, the Vietnam War was big. So that's the one big story that impacted me. But other than that, that was really it. And so these kids today on social media, Instagram, Facebook, they just see everything. And I think it's messed up the psyche of an entire generation. And so they're always comparing themselves to everyone, and what they need to understand is most of what they see is fake. And if there's one bit of advice I would tell people is, look, money is not going to make you happy. It's just not. As a matter of fact, if you go into business, don't go into business to make money. There's a running joke that if you want to make $1 million in the restaurant business, start off with $2 billion, and once you lose $1 million, sell. That's a joke, but it's almost true. So really, if you want to make money in the restaurant business, don't go into it. Now, if you want to produce the absolute best product that you know how to make and provide the best service that you possibly can and offer the best value that you can, then go into business. Because at the end of the day, we compete by comparison. people are always looking for someone that's doing something a little bit better than what they've already seen. And that's the best advice for taking anything to the market, no matter what it is. And, you know, so when I opened, and again, that was my focus when I opened. I wanted to provide the absolute best product I could possibly make and then give it offer the best value. And that's what we did. But we've evolved. I mean, 31 years in business now, if I would be the first to tell you that it's not 1 year of business and 30 years of repetition. It is 31 solid years of business, being in business, because we're constantly changing and evolving and looking for ways to improve anywhere and everywhere we can, no matter what it is. And, you know, in our restaurant, in the restaurant industry, in the restaurant hospitality business, we deal with all the senses, all of them, from sight, smell, sound, feel, taste. I mean, everything. We deal with them. So you always have to look at your business through the eyes of your guest. You have to go in there and see it how they see it. And if you do that, you're creating that experience that you want, and therefore you're providing it for your guest. And there's really no better business to be in if you really enjoy it and you're good at it. You don't have to be the best out there, but you do have to be the most consistent.
Yeah.
So work on that for sure. But it's been fun, and I have such a great team, and it's taken obviously time to get here. And that's one thing a lot of people don't have, is the patience that it takes to get here. I had visited a restaurant last week that was having some challenges, and it looks like they're going to be closing now. But they've been in business for a number of years, almost 10 years, and they never really evolved the way they should have at this point in their stage, because I just walking in and looking around, I could see that a lot of challenges, lots of them.
You know, what just stood out to me is how you put yourself in the position of your guests and what their experience would be. I remember in Michael's Backstreet Cafe, 1 o'clock in the morning, I would sit down and eat. Finally, we had the chance to dine together. And we always played musical tables. So we'd sit at one table, see the angle that the people were looking at. We'd sit at another table, see that angle, and eat our own food. And sometimes get served, so we get to experience that. I remember we had a logbook where people came in and left their addresses and so forth and comments. And one of the comments is that you can practically lick the walls because of the aromas that were wafting through the air. They made a lot of other comments too. Some of them were a little X-rated, but the point is that you try to be that. You try to build on that experience. You come to me one day 10. The next time you come to me, like the 10th visit, I've got to still knock your socks off. So we were offline. We were talking a little bit about how the media portrays our industry, and also I was also describing to you, meeting you and a few others that have the same mindset about the industry is not always the case. And some people, if you start talking about the customer's always right, or you start talking about, you're just trying to go above and beyond. People it doesn't take all of that. And then the media, when they have movies about our industry, they make it sound like we're just like these pirates or whatever, people that, just barely do enough to get by. But a lot of us have that deep-seated passion. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this industry so long. There's a lot of other industries you can be in and make a lot more money.
Well, I will say, if you love people, then you'll love the industry. Service is, what we basically do day in and day out. But hospitality is about it's about how you make your guests feel, and it's that little extra, the lagniappe that people remember. And it doesn't have to be anything huge. It's just something so small that most people aren't used to receiving. And I find it not comical, but surprising that more people don't do it, and a lot of times it's just a personality trait. I don't know what, but I just enjoy it. You have to be aware of your surroundings. You have to be conscious of what people are doing, their body, their mannerisms, their body behavior, to see what you can do to enhance the experience and just do a better job overall.
There are 2 points that I want to make. One, could you share an experience where a person comes into your place, they're upset, whatever, the kids aren't acting right, they had a bad day at work, maybe they got fired, and you and your staff turned that situation around because of how you showed hospitality?
I can't think of a specific experience, but I actually enjoy, well, I don't handle them today, but I used to really enjoy a guest complaint, because you're right, it's about being able to turn around the situation. You want them to actually you want to treat them so well that they forget about what they were complaining about. And usually, and I forget who said this, I want to say it was the president of National Car Rental years ago, but he said a guest complaint or a customer complaint is an opportunity to resell them. And so you have this opportunity, and if you make them happy and you please them, they're going to not only come back, but they're going to be more loyal than they ever were before. So guest complaints are just opportunities. That's all they are. And the fact that they even gave you the opportunity to resolve it is really what you ought to be happy, because they could have just done nothing and never came back.
That's right.
And so, yeah, Tillman Fertitta said there are no spare customers. There aren't. The environment is very, very competitive. We're all fighting for the same patron, and we just need to do just a little bit better job than the guy down the street, and hopefully, win out.
Yeah, I mean, I know you've had tons of those experiences, and even vicariously to your staff. And we talked about the online situation. So nowadays, everybody can go online and send a review in about your restaurant on multiple platforms.
Yes.
And so sometimes our challenge today is to be able to get as much as 100% response, and saying nothing is not always a good thing. It isn't a good thing, actually. And then also, I would advise people as well, as I've been a business coach with ASU for 4 years in their prep program, entrepreneurs in the underserved communities that were in hospitality business, that you don't want to argue with the person online and say and try to defend yourself. You want to do like you said. You want to give that opportunity to turn them around. You never want to say, well, we were short-staffed that night, so that's why that happened. No, they don't want to hear that.
Yeah, they don't want excuses. If anything, the first thing that should come out of your mouth is, I apologize. And what can we do to make this better for you?
Exactly.
And sometimes guests can be over demanding in what they want, and we face that all the time. But it's really at the end of the day about being fair. And the saying, the customer's always right. I used to believe that, but like whenever there's a situation between a staff member and a guest, and it may have rose to a heated level, I will never just take the side of a guest, especially in front of a staff member, because it's important to have their back. A lot of times there's just misunderstandings. That's all it is. And we're human, and we should be able to resolve these things amicably. And so the customers, they're both right. Let's put it that way. And let's hear each one out and go from there. But let's just not automatically assume that the guest is right and our staff messed up.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, because we have to present a united front as restaurateurs. We have to have our staff's back. I did a small writing on that subject about the customer is always right. And what I realized was it's just a moniker, really. It's just a moniker to establish a way of thinking, meaning we're not going to, the opposite of which is where you're always on the defensive and you're thinking, they must be wrong. Obviously, they're not always right. But based on what I ended up writing, it made the case for keeping that mindset, but still doing, like you said, trying to bring the situation to a resolution. And because I've seen situations where people, like, they have attitudes, the customer's not always right, and then they end up going down the wrong path when it comes to to service. I wanted to share with you briefly about a experience that I had here in a breakfast house here, a big chain, and maybe you might be able to speak to that as well, where my wife and I went and spent $50 on breakfast. And I'm not going to mention any names because that's not what this is all about. I love Eggs Benedict, and I love it runny, and I asked for the eggs to be very soft. So when I got my Eggs Benedict, I cut into one of the eggs, and it was like almost hard boiled. Meaning when you cut into it, though, it's not something that you could just take off the plate and just say, we make this. So I just said, I tell you what, to the server, just bring me another one that's cooked right, and I'll keep going. Well, anyway, I got the bill. It was a $2.50 charge. And I said, hey, you might have made a mistake. This shouldn't be on my bill because it was a mistake that happened when it came out. And then the manager came over to me and said, you ate it, you pay for it. I said, you're going to argue with me over $2.50, something that cost you about 30 cents, and lose a customer possibly? I don't care. You have to pay for it. And then she began to get aggressive with me and pulled my plate from you have to leave. It was really, I couldn't believe it. So I said, I'm going to write a review and I'm going to call corporate office. She says, call the corporate office, they'll back me up. And lo and behold, when I called the corporate office and I wrote a letter to them, it was what they call crickets. They never, to this day, responded to my situation. So how does a company get that big? I mean, we're talking national, and be able to do what that person did, which was completely opposite of what we're talking about today?
Wow. Yeah. So I will say that dealing with the public today is the most challenging it's ever been. Meaning, it wasn't your situation that they got very defensive on. It's probably the hundreds they've had before that were legitimately, they had a good reason for being that way. Mm-hmm. But yours, they should have just taken the $250 off. That's all. That's it. I mean, it's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
And you're right. So I would have just. Did they make you a new plate or just 2 eggs on the side?
Just one egg.
One egg on the side.
On the side.
Okay. So yeah, you're right. So that's what I would ask. Just bring me an egg on the side.
Yeah, I didn't want them to have to go back and take the whole plate.
Right. Exactly.
And remake it. So I was trying to help the kitchen out.
Yes, and also whether or not you ate it is irrelevant because they would have had to throw in the trash anyway.
Yeah.
So, well, everyone has a different way of handling guest interactions. That's not the one that I would have gone down for sure. And we receive stuff not like that, but because we don't serve eggs, but you name it, we've seen it. Yeah.
Well, that is why I want to do what I want to do. I mean, this whole podcast and anything that I do in the industry is in an effort to raise the bar. When I came up in New York and these different places that I've worked, it was a craft. Like people, that was their living to serve. It wasn't like a side job. And I think that we owe it to the public to do our very best, as you said, and to treat the people as if we really appreciate the fact that they took the time to go past that restaurant and come to ours, and leave a legacy that their children will see that too, and they'll become legacy guests. So this has been such a great experience, and again, I'm honored to be in here talking to Russell Ybarra, the owner of Gringo's and several other concepts, Jimmy Changas. And I just want to wrap it up here by just asking if you can just summarize to our listeners, what advice would you give them to helping us to do this, raising the bar on hospitality? Michael Brown, Russell Ybarra, we don't own the concept. We are just players in the game. What could you say to our listeners that would help them to see the light, if you will?
Well, first off, I think it's important to develop an eye to recognize excellence, just to gravitate toward it and study it, whether it means going to work for this company or whatever it takes, till you can keep learning every stage of the business and keep, because there's a saying, you can never live long enough, learn through the mistakes of others, because you can never live long enough to make them all yourself. So much of the work has been done for you. It's just a matter of studying it and understanding it, the whys. And so, I mean, when I was growing up, when I was 18, 19, 20 years old, Pappas Restaurants, they were making a big scene, and I've admired them to this day, and I still do, and because they just operate on a different level. But there's still point of differences where I believe we can excel over them. And back in the early 2000s, I created our 5 core values, and the very last one is never being satisfied, because if we did 1, 2, 3, and 4 correctly, then number 5 is just a given, never being satisfied, always pushing the envelope to improve, because as long as you're getting better, it forces your competition to have to do the exact same thing to keep up with you. So I'd rather be out in front and everyone else behind me, because it's easier, it's less crowded, if you will, by trying to be the best, wanting to be the best. Vince Lombardi said that absolute perfection can never be achieved. But if you chase it, you'll catch excellence. And that's what everyone should be trying to do today, is become the best that they can be. And that's really what it's about. One of my favorite people in the world is Martin Luther King. The speech he gave in 7 months before he was assassinated to Barrett Junior High outside of Philadelphia. That's what they call the street sweeper speech. But he talks about, if your lot in life is to be a street sweeper, be the best street sweeper that ever lived. The one that God would say, here lived a great street sweeper. He's at the speech where he says, if you can't be a bush, be a tree. If you can't be a highway, be a trail. If you can't be the sun, be a star. Because it is not by size that you win or you fail in this world. It's about being the absolute best of whatever you are. And I sell tacos for a living. That's it. Tacos, enchiladas, fajitas. But I want to be the best. Am I the best? Well, that's to be determined by the people that patronize us. But, we're 20 units in. We have momentum. We have 3 in development. So we're doing something right. And I want to pay attention to what we're doing right. Take it for granted. I never want to get to a point that I'm arrogant or cocky and saying, look at us. No. We have a lot of failings. We have a lot of people that we work with, and we just want to bring out the best in everyone that touches our business, from our employees to our vendors to our patrons.
You can only say amen to that, Russell. You've heard it from the horse's mouth today. You've heard it from a person who lives it, breathes it, has a resume about it, has, maybe millions of satisfied customers that have been going to him for years and years and years. And so I would highly recommend that you take this to heart, what Russell has shared. I did want to say that the Martin Luther King speech, I won an oratory contest in the 6th grade where I said that I have a dream speech.
Awesome.
And to your point, I was the underdog. My neighbor, she did the Susan B. Anthony speech, and she was a 4.0 student. And I just kind of fell into this. But my mom said that when I finished, 300 people had wet, crying eyes.
That's awesome.
And here's the thing. I wanted to quit. I said, no, I can't do this, Mom. She said, we're going to work every night and we're going to play it. And so I would say, I have a dream. She said, no, say it with emphasis. I have a dream. And when I said that speech and I finished, at the end it said, from every village and every hamlet, from every state and in the city, I have a dream. I can't remember exactly, but basically when the whole place was crying. That was in the 6th grade. The other thing that you mentioned was, being the best that you can be and not letting your success go to your head. I had the fortunate experience of 4 times after cooking for a seat of 100 people at a time, having 4 standing ovations when I went out to talk to the tables. And I used to wear the tall chef's hat, And I remember walking back into the kitchen saying, I got to fit that head back through that door again, because guess what? Tomorrow I still got to go to the Fulton Fish Market. I still have to pick up this. I still have to pick up that. And I still have to make the food. And so I was telling my staff at that time that though you see this happening right now, this is not something that you can just rest on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I always remind myself that success itself is a terrible teacher, because it can give you the illusion you can do no wrong. And I just, we're only a few steps away from it if we allow us to start believing ourselves too much.
So would you say then the opposite of which failure is a good teacher?
Failure is your best teacher.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, it's hard. Don't get me wrong, it's hard.
Yeah.
But it's been my best teacher anyway.
We grow in the valley.
Well, because within every failure is the seed of an equivalent success, Napoleon Hill.
Yeah.
And that's true. You just got to, if you failed at something, find out why you failed.
Right.
Learn from your failures. If you didn't learn, then it really was a failure.
Right. So what did Thomas Edison say about that? He said something about when he was asked about the light bulb, the incandescent light bulb. He said he didn't fail 1,000 times. He just found 1,000 ways that it would not work.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know. So and I'm encouraged by that. Also being a person in my 60s, and started this when I was 14. And so I'm here before you just for the main fact that I looked at an opportunity and saw a person that God put in my life that could help me realize the dream. So I appreciate you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I just wish future success for you and your family.
Likewise.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today. It's a wrap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Living Xtreme Hospitality. Taste the difference.